Hello class, this is Mr. Roth here. Today's lesson is going to be on mitosis and meiosis, which are the two versions of cell division. So let's take a little look at these two types of division and how they are similar and how they are different. So here's a table to help clarify this. I want to first talk about our standard type of cell division, which is called mitosis. This particular type of division results in two diploid cells. These two cells are exact clones of the original cell, and they are what we call diploid, which means they have two copies of every chromosome. This is standard. 99% of the cells in your body are this way. We have one chromosome from mom, one chromosome from dad in all of the cells of our body, with the exception of a few that we're going to talk about in a minute. But this standard form of mitosis is used to replace lost cells. So, going through the day, you actually slough off a lot of cells from the surface of your skin, and other cells are digested by your digestive tract, and those cells that go away and die, we have to have a way of replacing them, and that's what this is used for. They're also used for growth. When you were a little embryo and you were growing in size, you grew by adding more cells to your body. You didn't grow by having the cells you had grow. They divide and they increase in number, and that's how our growth is accomplished. And so again, I just wanted to say the majority of the cells in our body are created by this process of mitosis. Now let's compare it to the specialized type of meiosis. This particular type of division results in 4 cells compared to the 2 from mitosis. These 4 cells are special cells, by the way. They are 1N, which means they only have half the normal amount of chromosomes. They have one copy of each chromosome. And these specialized type of cells are called gametes, and they are a type of sex cell used for reproduction. Now, so the only place in the body where this specialized type of division is occurring is in the germ line of the reproductive organs. Nowhere else in your body is this going on. So it's a very special type of division. So let's look at the standard type of division, which is used for growth and maintenance. This is a root tip of a particular plant. Not sure the type of plant, but all plants use the same method of growth of their roots, which is at the tip of the root they have a place where mitosis is occurring very, very rapidly and consistently. And so if we were to look inside the cells here, we would see that they are undergoing mitosis. The addition of numbers of cells in the tip here results in the tip of the root extending and essentially penetrating further into the soil to allow that plant to acquire water and nutrients. We look at this image here on the right. This is showing a zoomed in view of the surface of somebody's skin. Our skin is kind of a scaly type tissue. It's got multiple layers of skin. It's called simple stratified squamous epithelium, which means that it's a multi-layered tissue. However, when those cells arrive at the surface of the skin, they dry out and they eventually are lost. And so dust actually is in large part dried up skin cells from people who have been in the room. So next time you think of dust, you can know that kind of gross fact about that. But as these cells are lost from our body, we do have to have a way to replace them. Otherwise, our entire body would turn to dust eventually. And so mitosis is used to replace those cells. Mitosis is also used in embryonic development. At some point, we were all a fertilized egg. We were all a one-celled organism. But we became full-grown human beings through cell division. And the cell division that's used for this process is the standard type. It's mitosis. And so we make exact copies of the original cell, and this 2-cell stage becomes a 4-cell stage, which becomes an 8, and as each one of these cells goes through mitosis, we get a 16-cell stage, so on and so forth, until we have the billions of cells that make up our body. Now I wanted to mention, though, that if we look at the step before the fertilized egg, how did the fertilized egg come into existence? And that's where we need the process of meiosis. We know that our mother and our father contributed a gamete Each of them contributed a gamete, which when they fused formed this fertilized egg. Now the gamete, again, is that specialized haploid cell. So for the mother, she provides the egg, which is 23, half the number of chromosomes, and then dad offers his half of his chromosomes with a sperm cell. When the sperm cell and the egg fuse, we then end up with the full 46 chromosomes, and we have what we call a zygote, which is another word for a fertilized egg. Once that fertilized egg exists, this blue arrow represents the process of mitosis, by which those cells divide and multiply. And eventually they organize themselves into tissues and organs and organ systems, which make up the full organism. So let's take a look at these two processes side by side and discuss their differences. Mitosis and meiosis both initially start with DNA replication. The DNA replication process, as you can see here, results in the duplicating of the chromosomes. We see that there are 4 initially, times 2 equals 8. We can see that they're in pairs now, so the total here is 8. That's what DNA replication accomplishes, and it occurs in both processes. But the difference between these processes is that mitosis only has 1 division after that, and the process is done. But in meiosis, there's 1 division here, and there's another division, which results in the daughter cells, the final product, being half the normal amount of chromosomes when compared to the original. And so that is what makes meiosis so useful, is because when you have a half from father and a half from mother, and they come together, you then have a whole. And so that is why meiosis is used for reproduction. Mitosis, on the contrary, is used, again, just for maintenance of the body and replacing lost cells. I wanted to mention, though, that the replication process of the DNA that occurs in both mitosis and meiosis is something called semi-conservative. In other words, one of the strands is maintained, while the other strand that results in that newly synthesized cell comes from new nucleotides that have been added to it. These nucleotides are floating around in the cytosol of the cell, and they zoom in and they attach and they form the complete double-sided DNA strand. But when you look here, it's important to know that one of the strands came from the original and one is newly synthesized. That's why we call it semi-conservative. It's also important to note that the process of mitosis is regulated. There are different stop points and checkpoints which the cell runs through to determine whether or not it's ready to move on and divide. This turns out to be the cause for cancer. When a cell is not properly being regulated and it's replicating itself uncontrollably, it results in a mass of cells that are duplicating uncontrollably, and that results in a wad of cells called a tumor. A tumor is destructive to the body because you're not supposed to have those growing in the different parts of our body, and they can actually cause stress and ultimately result in the death of the organism. A tumor, an uncontrolled cell growth, is what we call cancer. So again, it's the checkpoints in the cell cycle here that help to regulate and prevent cancer. We're going to talk about this cycle in more depth in a future video. I wanted to show you here, this is something called a karyogram, and it's where we take all of the chromosomes inside the cell and we lay them out and organize them so we can see them. And we see here that there are a total of 23 different types of chromosomes. And if we look closely, we find that this particular cell had 2 copies of each type. So for example, chromosome type number 1 has 1 and 2 copies. Same with chromosome number 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So there's 2 copies of each. This would make this a diploid cell, 2N in other words, and that's standard. 99% of the cells in your body have cells with 2 copies of each chromosome. When we look, however, at a gamete, for example this sperm cell, and we look inside and we look at the chromosomes we find there, if we were to lay them all out, because it's a haploid cell, we find that there's only one copy of each type of chromosome. And that's what makes a cell haploid. And this is perfect for reproduction, because if you add an egg and a sperm together, you then end up with the normal 2N cell, which is a healthy cell that can go and develop into a healthy human being. I hope the differences and similarities, and of course the purposes of mitosis and meiosis are clear at this point, and I hope this video has been helpful. We will see you in class tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.